We've seen major shipments of money coming through here that were destined for Mexico. Typically in a year, the three of us sees, anywhere from 500,000 to $1 million in cash.
You're being detained right now on suspicion of trafficking illegal currency.
Yeah, as you can see, there's hundreds of cars that go by every minute, and we have to somehow sort through that ton of traffic. Typically, I see them long before they see me because I'm sitting still just watching traffic. If they're a criminal that's committing a serious crime or something that's serious in their mind, and they suddenly notice me when I've seen them all along, they're going to have that fear reaction. They're going to have that adrenaline dump. They're going to stop thinking clearly, and they're going to do something that disrupts the flow of traffic.
So you got to ask yourself, why do you want to do this? What keeps you motivated to stay proactive and get bad guys off the street?
The facts is a big cannon against a little tiny gun of opinions, because we've all heard people give us their opinions.
Let's talk about how easy it is to get narcotics in this country. Once they're in this country, anywhere within 2 days, the drugs will be in our cities.
Because we know knowledge is power.
In this podcast, I sit down with Mike Stewart. If you've ever been in my class, he's one of my first, 5 slides, because that's how influential he's been in my interdiction career. I would not be anywhere in this interdiction world without him. He tries to play it off like it's something I did. There's no way. He changed my perspective, molded my mind, introduced me to interdiction, and then, even though I was probably the most annoying person in the world to him, he fostered my knowledge, always there to answer questions, and still is always there to answer questions. He's one of the most amazing interdiction guys I know. Not very well known across the country because he wants to remain that way. And wealth of knowledge. I can't thank him enough for what he's done for me personally. And hopefully one day I can convince him to get out there and teach in any realm. Mike has recently retired from the sheriff's department and now is working as a prosecutor. Dude is an amazing wealth of knowledge, super intelligent, and he's what all interdiction guys and girls should emulate, look up to, and idolize. So let me know what you think. I get him to come in the studio, which is unique for a lot of these because a lot of the interdiction guys and girls that I talk to are all over the country. I was just fortunate to have one that worked in the same county that I worked in. But yeah, let me know what you think. I appreciate you joining me on the podcast. Little do people know that how much of an impact you had in my career. Starting out, there was a few people that worked interdiction around here, and I was probably this annoying little kid, and you took time to spend with me when you probably just wanted to go smash loads, and I know for a fact, looking back, that I was annoying as fuck. But I appreciate you taking the time. I'll give you a better intro when we're done recording this, and I'll record it on my own. But I am very grateful for that, and that's the main reason that you're here is I wouldn't be the cop that I am without you, man.
Well, you're very humble. Oh, that's probably not true, but I appreciate you saying it
That
anyway.
is all very true. So you were some of my motivations. I remember going to the academy. I still use your picture from when you were on TV, and I had no idea what interdiction was. And you guys came in and talked about it, and I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. And you guys talked for 3 hours at best. And I came back to my agency. We didn't have interdiction.
Yeah, that's out of every 100 cadets. You might get one guy like you out of there. So
yeah,
a few hundred probably. So
you definitely changed my profession, my career completely. But enough about me. Let's talk about you, man. So when did you become the police, and what motivated you to get there?
So, I actually was a Hobart cop, and I started in 2000. And when I got out of college, I kind of always wanted to be a cop, even as a kid. My dad was a cop, and he was a Lake County sheriff. And being a kid, I always wanted to be around the police. I would always take his little gun belt and run around the house and that. I just always wanted to be the police. And he always tried to steer me away from that because he knew what the lifestyle was going to be like, So he's like, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor, go be all these things, So, but unfortunately for him, he couldn't stop me from doing it, When I got out of college, Hobart was hiring at the time, and I didn't know shit about Hobart except we used to always beat him in football.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Maryville.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But I didn't know that much about Hobart, so I came over there. They were hiring. I applied, made it on the list, got hired, and that's how I got started.
We look back, and there was a ton of good cops in that era. We look at like a couple guys went to the FBI, and then they hired a lot of good cops that pretty much all ended up leaving, but for some reason. But there was a group, there was a cluster of amazing cops that I wish we still would have had just because of the guidance and the knowledge and experience.
A lot of good guys, a lot of good influences back in my career too. You know.
And then what took you from Hobart to the sheriff's department? How many years did you do in Hobart?
I did about 4.5 here in Hobart. You know, I really tried. I always wanted to be a Lake County cop because my dad was one.
That makes sense.
At the time that I was looking to be a policeman, they weren't hiring. They had a hiring freeze for a couple years during that time. I came here, had a great time here, but ultimately, you know, the pension at Lake County is better. The health insurance is better. The opportunities to do a lot of different types of police work. And at that time, I didn't know I was going to go do interdiction. Didn't know I was going to be in gangs. Didn't know I was going to be in the bureau, all the things that I've done there. But I knew that I'd have a better pension. I could leave in 20 years, get to have good health insurance, and I'd get to do a lot of different stuff in a lot of different areas. You know, we got up in East Chicago and Gary and Hammond, and we had some pretty wild times.
When you were a Hobart cop, did you see those avenues? Like, did you see them work in interdiction? And was that ever an aspiration, or was that not until you went over there?
You know, kind of the same way you were describing me a second ago. Back in those days, well, early in my career, I was just on the street. I liked doing the street stuff. I had that rough crew that was in Hobart back at those times, you know, the John Mitchells and the Scott Blakes and those guys. They, you know, we were having fun out there. But there was always at Lake County was Oscar Martinez, you know, and in our area in the Midwest, he was kind of the cowboy that was out there, you know, blazing the trail. And I would always hear him on the radio, you know, because we would scan county at night. And you could always tell, and I think he did it for dramatic effect, you know, but he would be out on the highway and he'd key up and he'd hear all the highway noise and he'd be like, County Paul 80. And you'd be like, oh, he got something, you know. He'd be like, send me a hook, start me a case for drugs. I'm like, damn it, man, I got to get out on that highway. So, you know, every time I heard that, it just got me more and more fired up. And I would get on the highway from time to time. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. So, but eventually I went there, you know, and that was one of the things that motivated me to go to county, you know, amongst the other things that I mentioned. And I did. And eventually I got selected to go on his interdiction team. So
When you, was your dad in any type of specialty in the county?
He was in the bureau.
Okay.
You know, he was just like, just one of those 1970s rough cops, you know, he's carrying a slapper, you know, walking around with a nightstick, just one of those old school guys. You know, and I always liked those guys, those kind of tough old school cops.
I mean, when I don't know, they always tell the story like how it used to be or whatever.
Yeah.
I like those stories if they make it into like something positive. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you have the salty guy that's like, oh, you know, policing sucks now or whatever. But the ones that were like, you know, it's just different, but they tell like those old school war stories are always interesting to hear, I guess.
Yeah, some of those guys, you know, are full of shit. You know,
right.
And the guys that really were tough out there, they're some of the nicest guys you've ever met. But when you're on the street and you have to take care of business, you know that they're always there, they got your back. And, you know, I think things were in ways were better back then.
Yeah. I think the cameras have done, they're a good thing and a bad thing. I think cameras do a good thing, but I also don't think they give you the full perspective. And that's what I think the public wants, and it's physically impossible unless you have like a drone flying over a cop at all times. Like you get a 180 view. You don't get like a 360 world view. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think back in the day you also had maybe a little bit more respect for law enforcement.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, the criminal justice system had some fear. You know, like you actually were afraid if you committed a crime, you might go to jail. And then some areas, you know, like that's kind of out the window at this point.
Yeah, you know, what that has done is it shines a light on all the bad things that cops have done around the country, you know, and there are bad cops out there that do stupid shit sometimes, but they don't always show the good things.
That's true.
So, and over the years, there's just been so many scandals that the country's never recovered from.
I agree. And you kind of get lumped in. One cop does something dumb. The I don't know, 700,000-800,000 of us
Yeah,
are just the
people
uniform.
see you collectively as the police. You know, how
Yeah.
many times are you sitting at lunch and somebody comes up, hey, my cousin's a cop in South Carolina, you know him? No, I don't know. No, I don't.
It's definitely an interesting profession and dynamic when it comes to that stuff. So after 4 years in Hobart, you went to Lake County. Do you have any siblings? Sorry, let me go back.
Yeah, I have a sister. She's a teacher
Okay.
in Michigan City.
I was going to say, no other law enforcement besides dad and family?
No, just me.
All right. And then after 4 years in Hobart, you go to Lake County. What did you go there initially? What were you, patrol?
Yeah, so I went there and I was in patrol for just under a year.
Okay.
You know, and by that time I had some time on the street. I had 4.5 years in Hobart. Went out there, was in patrol for a little bit less than a year, and they were looking to expand their interdiction team and give Oscar a few more guys. So I put in for it. You know, they picked me and 2 other guys, and we went into interdiction.
That's awesome. Was Oscar doing it by himself at the time?
Yeah, Oscar, he did it by himself for the longest time, and then kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier before we started the show. Like from time to time, he would try to pick somebody and expand the unit, but man, it takes a special breed of person to be good at interdiction. And he would put someone in there, they would fail, or they would put someone in there, and he didn't really like that person, and that dynamic didn't work out. So you know, he had a couple guys that did a decent job, but he was always looking to expand, and the sheriff's department was looking to expand it too, because they were starting to see money coming in and big drug busts in the newspaper and good publicity. So,
Oscar was the originator around here, right? There was no one before him?
oh, he was it. You know, back early in his days, he would always get in trouble trying to get out on the highway, you know, because I don't know where he got that passion from, but he would always be out there trying to get on the highway and make drug busts and stuff. And they'd be like, get back in your district. He'd go right back up on the highway and they'd bust him back in there. So
Who was the sheriff back in the
he was
day?
like, you know, he's just one of those guys that was you're not going to stop him from being successful. You're kind of like you. I appreciate you being humble and saying I did this and this, but you know, some people just refuse to fail at things, you know, and that's what you have to do to be successful in interdiction.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't take compliments well, but I don't know if, again, if I didn't have the foundation that I had, I don't know if I would be in the same position that I am right now. Who was the sheriff when Oscar was, or who created the team for Oscar? Like who was the one that's like, yeah, go do it?
You know, he kind of created it on his own. I think maybe Sheriff Bunsich was the sheriff at that time. Who was right before that? I can't remember. But I think that was mainly the time it started taking off was under Sheriff Bunsich.
When you go over there at that time, did you have aspirations to go on the highway, or was that like the first opportunity of many things that you wanted to get accomplished?
Yeah, no, that was the number one thing I wanted to do.
Okay.
Go on the interdiction. That's the main reason I went there.
Was Hobart not allowing you to go on the highway, or was that just like even a foreign topic?
It was completely foreign to all these city departments. You know, interdiction nowadays, everybody knows what it is. It's all over the country. Every department, you can't even go out on the toll road anymore without 50 different departments being out there.
Very
But
true. Very
in
true.
those days, you know, in 2004, 2005, it really wasn't big around the country. You know, so Hobart didn't have anything. Florida County didn't have anything. Jasper County didn't have anything. Nobody did really. So. Yeah, he was
He
it.
kind of forged his way. Were the state police even doing anything at the time, or nothing?
No, you didn't hear about state police making any
crazy.
busts or anything, which is crazy, right? Because they're on the highway all the time. Like, what the fuck are you doing out there?
I agree, especially like it took a county guy to show you that there's drugs on the highway. Like, that's
Right.
interesting.
Give me some DOT certifications, man. I'll be killing them out there.
Yeah, that's another talk. I tried to do it because I was like, hey, and the state had created a law that you can't do it. It's frustrating. It's annoying. I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Interesting that you have those same complaints and they're still here today.
Yeah.
So when you started interdiction, did Oscar take you into, what was the training like?
So it was me and Ed Cabela went out there. So we were riding together. We rode with Oscar a few times. Man, that was eye-opening because he was just on the highway 8 hours a day, just nonstop. He would fill up 2 5-gallon cans of gas and put them in his trunk so that he could stay out on the highway longer. And we're going up and down the toll road, just going in circles, and I'm falling asleep, and Ed's falling asleep, and Oscar's he's got a dip in, he's got a Mountain Dew, and he's just, you know, all day long. Pulled over and filled up gas. I'm like, dude, we're going to run out of gas, like on the highway. He'd pull over, put some gas in the tank. He's like, we got at least another hour right now.
Damn.
I'm like, dude, you are crazy. So that was the training, and it was eye-opening. So then after like about, 3 weeks of that, we finally got a bust. So we pull over this dude. He's coming from Gary. He's going down to Indianapolis. And he's kind of a low-level dude. But at that point, Oscar was just trying to make us, I think, get some drugs so that we see what's out there and get a little bit excited about it. So we pull this dude over, and he's showing all the indicators. He's nervous. He's kind of jumping around. He looks like he wants to walk away from the car and everything. We search the car, and we find 4 pounds of marijuana. And, me and Ed are coming from the street, and this was before marijuana was legal, so it wasn't as pervasive as it is now. But me and Ed, we got these 4 pounds of marijuana. We're like, fuck yeah, dude. We're taking like trophy shots with 4 pounds, each of us holding 2 pounds of marijuana. And we're just excited. Like that's the most weed we had seen ever. And Oscar's like, we should throw that shit in the ditch,
What year was that?
That would have been 2006, probably.
Yeah, I don't even think California or Colorado was going on the legalization.
I don't know when Colorado did, but I don't remember it being legal anywhere at that time. Because we weren't seeing like the hydro,
right.
the professionally packaged and vacuum. See, we're seeing the big ass Mexican bricks,
Right.
We got pictures of, old bales stacked up, on top of each other.
I've only seen that twice, and I have.
Dude, it's hilarious.
Nobody
would smoke that shit anymore. No. It's garbage.
Yeah. I made it into a chair, and I sat on it.
It's like got stems in it and stuff, and seeds falling all over the car.
What's your, since we go down this, what's your opinion on the legalization of marijuana?
I don't know. People point out that they talk about marijuana being safer than alcohol, and alcohol causes more crashes and stuff. And yeah, maybe that's true. But then why do you need another intoxicant to cause more crashes?
Yeah.
Okay, get rid of that one, keep this one. Whatever your thing is, I can't stand the smell of marijuana. I guess having been a cop for so long, I have like I'm mentally averse to it. Every time I smell it, I think of shitheads, and I get kind of like grossed out. So the thing I don't like about it is that the only reason that they want to legalize it in a lot of places is to generate more tax revenue.
Yeah, I hate that.
Right? Why don't you spend our taxes responsibly? And then you don't need to worry about getting everybody fucked up all the time.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, it's kind of like I'm on both sides of the fence. Like the state, I have a job to do, I have a responsibility. But I don't know. I don't know.
I go back and forth too, because I don't like the government being too controlling on one end, so maybe that's a little bit liberal on that side that, if you want to smoke weed, go smoke weed. I really don't fucking care. Just whatever. I want to go drink a beer, you go smoke some weed. It really doesn't bother me too much, but I don't know. I'm mentally averse to that stuff. I can't stand it.
Yeah. And that's like, I just wish me working still, I wish it was more consistent across the board.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's where I struggle as a cop here, where theoretically, if you have a gram of weed, you could go, I guess you should or could go to jail, and then 45 minutes either way, it's recreational legally, and you could have it.
Yeah.
The one big thing as a cop, I didn't want to lose the PC of the smell. Like that was one thing I was like
that's the key to the kingdom, right?
Well, I mean,
smells like weed in here. Everybody get out.
So like some states allow the odor, depends, but like some states, if it's raw, you can check for compliance to make sure that because theoretically you should be able to smell it through smell-proof bags and this. So I'm like, all right, I kind of like that. And if it's the burnt, then you can go like the OWI route or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of like evolving case law, right? Like the law hasn't caught up with what's going on in the country. So I don't know. I guess we'll see how it develops. Like in Illinois, right, and on Michigan, you can smoke weed. Your car still smells like weed. You drive across to Indiana because you work over here or whatever. Yeah. And the cop stops you and starts searching your car. I don't know. So they're going to have to start figuring out some case law on probable cause and all.
Just something more consistent. That's all I want. Make it consistent across the country, and I'm good with it. Like,
yeah. So I guess the bottom line is I really don't give a shit if they legalize it or don't legalize it.
Yeah, I got you. I do notice that there's a lot of violence. And I don't know if that's because certain states are around weed. A lot of weed violence. I don't know if that's because it's illegal in some states and legal in some. So not necessarily your, I guess, organized drug dealers now can get, you know what I'm saying? Like there's not an organization. Like I could be a freelancer basically and go find marijuana pretty much anywhere and then take it to some places that is illegal. And now I can make a huge profit and I don't know if that's where the violence comes from, but
anywhere you can make a lot of money, there's going to be violence. People are going to commit violence to make that money. People are taking advantage of the market, taking advantage of states that have illegal and don't have illegal. I always thought it was bizarre when you started stopping, minivans with soccer moms who were coming from the East Coast and they drove out to Colorado or whatever to get a bunch of weed to bring home and give to their family as gifts and stuff. I'm like, I just found that so strange that they could just go over there and acquire it. Back in early in my day, you had to have like a cartel connection to get that much weed. And, you're a real bad guy. But these are just, soccer moms on the weekends and stuff driving with vans full of weed.
Yep. And then, I mean, I think even if they make it, say, across the country, whatever, there's still going to be a black market because there's still black market cigarettes. There's still black market alcohol.
Yeah.
And again, the taxes doesn't do it any justice. That's where all the black market shit comes from. So if you're going to make it legal, like, I don't know, make it legal and don't tax the shit out of it.
Yeah, we'd catch those guys with, vans full of cigarettes coming from like Texas and Florida and stuff coming up this way with differently taxed cigarettes.
All right, back to interdiction. So when you were, after the 4 pounds of weed, was that done? Like that was the done training? Like you didn't get any more, like with Oscar?
Yeah, pretty much. And then it was on the job training. He would be out there with us and we'd stop something and be like, hey, all the indicators are there. Can you come check this out? I'm not finding it. In fact, my first day by myself, so we finished on a Friday. My first day that was by myself, I stopped a Ford Explorer or a Ford Expedition, old school, and they would always have those compartments in the back where the hump is, And I stopped this dude. All the indicators are there. I'm searching the car. I don't find nothing. So, first the guy denies me consent. So I called Oscar. I'm like, hey, he's denying me consent. I don't know what to do. He's like, all right, I'll get a dog. We'll head over there. So he comes over to my stop, which he probably wouldn't have if the guy would have just let me search. So I'm searching and searching, don't find anything. So Oscar starts searching. He goes under the dashboard. He's like, oh, you got something here. I'm like, where? He's like, you see that wire there? I'm like, I see a bunch of wires. I don't know what I'm even looking at. So then he's like, I know where it's going to be. He goes around to the back and he looks underneath. He's like, oh yeah, there's a compartment there. I'm like, where? And he's like, right there. I'm like, I don't see it. And he's shining his flashlight at it. And he shows it to me and I still don't get it. But the wire he was looking at was they used to have those magnetic relays, the little white wires with the relays. So that's what he saw glued up underneath the dash. And so we ended up getting it. It was like $186,000 this guy had in the back. And so we're all jacked up.
That was your first day by yourself?
That was my first day by myself. One of my first stops.
Pretty amazing.
Get a nice big bus like that, which I never would have found if he hadn't been there. So that vehicle, we ended up seizing it on the sheriff's department. And one of our pilots drove it around for years. And so I would always see it. And I would go back, when I got good at interdiction, I would go back and laugh because it was the sloppiest compartment. It was so bad. Like the plastic trim, he had sheet metal screws drilled through it into the floor. Underneath, hanging from like the axles was like the spray expanding foam. It was hanging down from there and stuff. Like it was just the sloppiest, worst compartment. I'm like, man, I never would have found that one. But
the very similar. Like mine was a month in, and I hit the compartment, and I go back, and I spent like 2.5 hours searching. Like he, on consent, gives me consent. I'm literally like, and then finally, I think he just felt bad for me, and he's like, do you just want to tell you where it is? And I'm like, yes. So he opens the compartment for me, and it was like 60 or 80 grand or something. But I go back and I look at the pictures I have of it, and I'm like, how the hell did I spend 2.5 hours on this thing?
God. Yeah, right. Later, when you get good and you realize and you look back, you're like, what the hell? And I always think about what torture it must be for the guys when they know it's in there, and you're just in there searching and searching and searching, and it's like an hour, and they're just the whole time they got to be sweating, thinking like he's gonna find it, he's gonna find it. Your guy, of course, is like, I can't take it anymore. It's right
there. Pretty much. Going through the interdiction aspect, was there a lot of hate within the county because you're so new on the job, or was there not a lot of people that wanted to do it?
You always get some people, they get envious when you start making good busts or stuff, or, and you're shit talkers. But at that time, I wouldn't say anything particularly unusual. There was a couple people that had tried doing interdiction and failed at it. There wasn't a ton of interest on the department outside of a couple of us who were newer on the department. And interdiction, man, it's a grind. It is not for everybody. It's a tough job. So there weren't a lot of people. Yeah, they want to drive the nice cars and they want to make the big busts and stuff, but they don't want to do the work that's necessary. They don't want to sit on the highway for fucking hours and hours and hours, and stop 1,000 cars and search cars, and it's snowing and icy and you crawl underneath them and you're cutting your hands up, shoving them in. They don't want to do all that stuff.
They just want the glory.
They want a nice picture of them with some kilos is what they want.
But there wasn't a lot of hate even though you were new on it, or was it?
Not particularly. At least I didn't notice. I didn't pay much attention to that stuff. So Yeah, people got jealous of Oscar, back in his day because he would be in the front of the newspaper, and at that time, interdiction was no one really knew much about it. So,
Right.
You get a bust of a couple kilos of cocaine. How many cops had even seen a kilo of cocaine in their career?
Right.
So it was a big deal. So there was some jealousy, I think, on that side. But as we got into it and it started catching on around the country a little bit more mainstream, people had seen his bust. So it wasn't anything as new as it was back when he kind of started it.
No, that makes sense. When it comes to, and I wasn't necessarily mean like hate towards you. I was more like you being so fresh into like a year there, you're a cop from somewhere else, transfer in, get into a specialty. So I was just curious if it was kind of the similar dynamic. Some other agencies I see where someone new comes in, but if you didn't have a lot of people that were putting in for that position, didn't aspire to be in it, like I guess it is.
Yeah,
what it is.
I don't know how many people put in when I did, but they took both of us over there. So.
And then from that point on, career-wise, interdiction kind of came and went a couple times. Like,
well, interdiction was still there, but I got bounced around a few times.
All right. The different dynamic from a city department that's ran by a chief that compared to an elected official, do you think what is more stable, I guess?
Well, I mean, everybody answers to somebody. So, when you have a chief that's appointed by a mayor on a city department, depending on who that mayor is, depending on who that chief is, who he picks, it might be one of the kiss asses or something. You never know. So you can end up sideways of the administration there. A sheriff, we've been fortunate to have a couple of pretty good sheriffs. Oscar, he's been a good sheriff in his time in there. And the good thing is that he was a county policeman. The bad thing is when you get somebody elected sheriff who was never a policeman, and that can happen in the county, and it has happened a few times. Then sometimes things don't go as well as they do here. They don't understand the type of equipment you need. They don't understand the type of pressures you're under. So that doesn't really answer your question, but
fair enough. I don't know if I think it's unique. I don't know if it's across the country, but how a sheriff could be an elected sheriff, run for that position, not having zero enforcement experience. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it can. And and even in the upcoming race, you get people with, some of them have police backgrounds, but they're wide police backgrounds. You have a state trooper. You have a guy who worked in a smaller town in St. John. You have a guy who's a county policeman. And then there are some professional politicians who are thinking about throwing their hat in the ring too. And a lot of times they get a lot of support politically. So you just don't know what you're going to end up with, I guess.
Yeah. I guess all law enforcement isn't that stable of a career when you look at it. Different administrations, different sheriffs.
There's nothing stable about this job.
But it just when you started to get bounced around, was that more different sheriffs or?
Yeah, we had the same sheriff for a while, and then we got a different one, and then different chiefs, and one of our chiefs got killed. You remember Gary Martin? He was on that bicycle benefit for police, and he got run over and killed. So he left, and then we got a different chief, and then me and the one deputy chief were not getting along, and then sometimes I was a dickhead when I was a younger policeman.
I think a lot of interdiction guys want to be left alone and just let you work.
That's always been me. I didn't work well with others really, and I guess that's why I liked interdiction, because it was just me. I'm out there on the highway. Yeah, guys were around if I needed backup, but Ed might be 40 miles away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, back me up, So I like being out there doing my own thing. I don't need the accolades. I don't need the administration patting me on the back. I'll come in, I'll give you your pile of money, and you can have all these drugs and go burn them or whatever. Just leave me the fuck alone. That's all I ever really wanted. But during that time, there was jealousy, because we had just got new Dodge Chargers when they came out, but we fucking paid for them.
Right.
We seized like a couple $1 million that year, and they buy us, a $50,000 car.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
The logic behind it seems to,
Yeah, so that's where a little bit of the envy came in. But yeah, I got bounced around. Sometimes I was a dickhead, sometimes they were dickheads. So
what was your motivation? Like most interdiction guys have to have some type of self-motivation, like because the stuff that you're talking about, like the politics aspect of it, and no matter what anyone tells you, like you have to have your own self-motivation, I feel like, to be successful in interdiction. Probably in the profession, but definitely in interdiction. So what was your own self-motivation?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, man. I just sometimes think I have like a mental disorder. I didn't care about them patting me on the back. I like to be left alone. I like to do a good job. I like to go out and do my own thing, some kind of internal thing. The same reason I work out in my garage by myself.
Yeah.
It's just something that I'm doing on my own for me, for whatever reason, I don't know. But it's just guys that do good at interdiction have some type of an internal motivation that you really can't put your finger on. Like they just, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, no, I think mine, I don't know, this could be completely wrong, but I think some of mine is like, I get excited about beating someone at almost like a mental game in like 7 to 10 minutes during a traffic stop, and knowing that they planned a lot longer, weeks, months, years to beat cops at doing this, and now I'm able to beat you in that very short period of time. So that there's some motivation for me where I look at it, I'm like, man, you spent all this time, and I was able to theoretically beat you at a mental game in this short period of time, and I'm just some random cop.
I like that idea of it. I play a lot of chess online and stuff because I just like the mental aspect of it. The thing I liked about interdiction too is there wasn't like a lot of gray area as far as arresting the people. If you got kilos of cocaine in your car, you're going to jail. You really, in a way, you put away bad guys. Yeah, some of these guys are mules, but you're really putting a dent on a drug trafficking organization, on some real criminals. Working on the street, working, taking calls for service and stuff, there's sometimes a lot of gray area, and we talked about earlier how things have changed a little bit, and police have a little bit less discretion now because everything's on body cam, and they always want to second guess your decision, so the officer has a little bit less discretion. And I never liked the feeling of arresting somebody who I felt like maybe didn't need to be arrested, or maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe their wife really just pissed them off, and she attacked him, and now then he lashed out at her, and now he's going to jail too. So I never liked the gray area. I like to go out and go after real criminals.
No, yeah, unless you're going to work like long-term investigations or high-level investigations, there's no other way that you're going to, in the grand scheme of things, come across high-level criminal organizations. Like it's very rare in the profession unless you're in some type of long-term investigation or high-level investigation.
Yeah, I needed things that are like a challenge, and interdiction is challenging. And after I left interdiction, when Oscar became sheriff, and then later when I became a commander doing investigations, homicide investigations, I got into cold case investigations. And outside of interdiction, that probably was the most gratifying, personally, feeling that I ever got in law enforcement was solving a cold case domestic murder where this girl had been shot in the head and her body burned, and it went unsolved unnecessarily. And I was able to solve that and get the guy put in prison for 113 years. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that the parents came in and they were old and they had lost their daughter, and they were just the two of them. They were so grateful that we were able to get some justice for them. I guess it doesn't bring her back, but putting away really bad people. That's what I like about it.
When it comes to that case, how were you able to manage being the boss, basically, and then also working that case? Were you doing it on your own time, basically?
Sometimes it's weird, and you probably can relate from interdiction days. Like you get an obsessive mindset. So when I'm really working on something or really trying to do something, it's all I think about. I go home and I'm thinking about it, and I go to work and I'm thinking about it, and I get up early and go to work because I'm thinking about it. And so. And actually, being the commander, it made it easier because I don't have a regular caseload like the detectives do.
Makes sense.
So I could work on that and focus on it. Yeah, I just put a lot of work into it, a lot of search warrants, a lot of investigation.
How long was that case unsolved for?
I think it was unsolved for like 4 or 5 years.
How did you stumble across it, or did you know about it already?
As the commander, when things would catch my attention, I would start getting involved in them. If something, guy was having a hard time with a case, or it got brought to my attention, a lot of different ways. Sometimes people would call me and be like, whatever. This one, I saw it was in the newspaper, and her parents were talked to the Times, and they were like, our daughter's murder has gone unsolved, and this, and they were kind of complaining about it. So the deputy chief showed me the newspaper article, and at that time we were part of the Metro Homicide Unit. So that originally was their investigation, but those guys were so overrun with murders, and there was only at the time, I think, 5 or 6 guys working, and they're catching, 15, 20 murders each
That's
a year,
crazy
and
to
that's
think
too
of
many
that.
for somebody
Yeah.
to work that intensive of an investigation. So this one kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, if it goes cold for a short time, in the meantime, they've caught 5 more that they got to investigate. So they were in the newspaper, and I don't know, it caught my attention. Made me have a little sympathy for them. It was pretty tear-jerker type article. So I just started looking into it.
Were you able to get confession out of that, or?
No, not a confession, but we got a conviction.
No, yeah. I'm just,
Yeah.
when it comes to your interview techniques from working interdiction to sitting in an office, did that translate well for you or not so much?
Yeah, it did. I think that interdiction guys make great detectives because, we talked a little bit before the show about that in interdiction, it's real similar to your interview room. Your car is like your interview room. And that's why I would always tell you to sit them right next to you. In the early
I hated
days.
it at first.
Yeah, right. It's uncomfortable.
It is.
But they're uncomfortable more than you are, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's real similar. And you kind of get used to asking those uncomfortable questions. You get used to prying into people's business and stuff. Culturally and socially, you're kind of taught not to pry into people's business. You're taught, not to ask those probing, invasive questions, not to call people on their lies. If they tell a little something that's exaggerated, you don't be like, no, that doesn't. But in interdiction, you learn to be invasive and pry into their stuff. And the better of an interdiction guy, the more smooth you are about getting that information out of them. So that's a great basis for someone who's going to go be a detective and have, a 2-hour-long interview with somebody where you're doing kind of the same things, but over an extended period of time. You keep someone on a traffic stop for 2 hours, they're going to have a few issues. But
A little bit. The office setting where you had more time to sit there and pick it apart, or did you like almost being under the gun of working interdiction where you're limited on time?
I kind of like interdiction better, I think. Being in an office gets pretty slow, gets pretty boring. I always like to be out on the street. And I like the pace of it, If I'm out there and I'm in the zone working interdiction, I'm stopping all day long, stopping, interview. All right, nothing here, cut them, go on to the next one, and the next thing you know, the whole day is gone. In an office, you're kind of it's way more laid back. You're sitting there and you read some documents, and then you go in there, you might have an interview with somebody that day, and I get a return back from Facebook on a search warrant, and it's 10,000 pages of messages between these all the bullshit they're doing, So yeah, I like the fast pace. I think better than sitting in an office.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I like what you're talking about when it comes to the investigation aspect of it, but I don't know if I would like the other stuff that's associated with working cases and being a detective. Like, if you wanted me to interview someone or work some cool cases like homicide, I was like, all right, cool. But like to sit back and then write all these search warrants and stuff, I don't know if I would have the.
Yeah, you would do good at it. Interdiction guys are good at everything, and it's for the same reasons, right? Because you'd go in there and I would assign you a murder, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to figure this out," and and you would keep working at it until you did. And the same reason you're successful in interdiction, you would do that.
It'd probably drive me nuts.
Interdiction cops make the best of every type of cop. They're just driven people.
Yeah. I think that motivation comes from somewhere, and then it translates to interdiction. So I think that you'll have that same motivation
Yeah, they all
wherever.
have mental disorders too.
That's probably more than anything else.
They're all fucked up in the head. Every interdiction guy that's out there doing a good job.
Yeah. No. Something's definitely wrong with us. Back to interdiction. When you're working interdiction, what was some of your memorable seizures? What were some of your frustrations when it comes to interdiction besides getting removed from it?
Interdiction is just a big mind fuck. It's so hard to stay focused out there, especially when you've been doing it for a few years, and especially if you're sitting on the highway and it's summertime and you've been out there. And it's been like, 2 months, 3 months since you got anything good. And then you start second guessing yourself. You're like, well, maybe they switched the types of cars they're using, or maybe they switched up the type of drivers they're using, or maybe they're taking a different path on the west side of Illinois because they don't want to come up 65, or whatever. You start playing all these scenarios, and then one day here comes the little guy with his baseball cap on, driving his Ford Explorer, 60 miles an hour, You're like, okay. So it's hard to stay motivated doing that.
I'm glad that you have the same struggles though.
I think it's universal in the addiction world. It's just so hard to stay focused, and And keep doing it, man, especially when you've been get on a little dry spell.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to interdiction, like you get a load, like you don't want to go back and do paperwork because like I'm like, all right, I'm in the zone right now.
Yeah,
Let's go
right.
back and hit another one before like it does turn into a month or two, and I'm like, Jesus, I just suck at my job.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You know, when you get a good team together and you have like 3 guys, 4 guys or something, and you're out there and one guy gets it, and you're like, he's like, can you follow the car back to the garage? I'm like, no.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm like, I'll throw him in the jail, but I'm going to hit the road. You go ahead and do your paperwork. I'm going to get out there. And you have that little competition. Like, oh man, he just got something. No, I got to get back out there.
Yeah, I'm always happy for people getting them, but it's also then now it has to be my turn. Like great job. All right, now like this is over with. Let me go back and let me get one now. Do you have any unique cases stopping people, murderers, anything that's outside of necessarily the dope money gun realm?
One time I did recover a little girl that was kidnapped.
That's
that was pretty interesting, and I actually ran the plate and it came back as like a felony vehicle, and that car had caught my attention and I was following it, and I ran the plate and it said something about a felony vehicle, and it didn't really say a lot, but I pulled him over and the little girl was laying down in the back seat. She was fine, but that was kind of an interesting case, I guess.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never had that opportunity, but I can only imagine. I don't know. No dope or guns money. That's probably the most rewarding one.
Yeah, I just saw a story in the paper. I forget where it was. Maybe like Kansas or something, or it was somewhere out that way. They recovered a kidnapped child, and I was like, man, that's amazing work those guys did. I can't remember who it was or what department.
It was Kansas.
It was just recently.
Yeah,
like
it was
in
Kansas.
last month. Kansas, yeah. And those guys do a good job out there.
Mm-hmm. What was your story with yours?
That was really about it. I think that it had been like some type of custody dispute, and the girl was kidnapped. Her dad took her and transferred. She'd been missing for like a month or 2.
Damn.
Yeah, and he took her and was trying to. It was a custody thing. So he had taken her and was trying to move off to another state with her, and he was rolling through here. So.
Was he cooperative with you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, everything was just very nonchalant, And then when the little girl told me her name and stuff, and I checked it, and his name came up too. I think came up that he was wanted, and it was the whole thing. So.
That's crazy. Throughout Interdiction, you've had several partners.
Yeah.
What do you think made the ones that stuck around successful compared to the ones that kind of came and went?
Yeah, that same thing. Some guys, they have that work ethic, and they'll stay out there and they'll just keep grinding at it until they get stuff. Ed was really good. He was kind of a more quiet guy, methodical. He knew a lot about cars, and he was good at talking to people. So he was probably the best partner that I had as far as interdiction, the most successful anyway. And then Freddie Villarreal, of course, he was out there. And he was one of Oscar's original. He was there before I was there. And then a little bit later, Freddie left and went and did undercover work. And then a couple years later, came back and did a little interdiction again. So we got to work together quite a bit. He was a good partner. He was very successful.
Outside of interdiction, did you ever go to gangs or narcotics or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I did. I've done everything over there. I was in patrol, and then I went to interdiction, and then they put me in gangs, and then they put me back in interdiction, and then they got mad and they threw me in civil for a little while. And I was out delivering the mail.
I still tell people the story about the mail, and you're still making dope seizures.
I did. I made the biggest seizure. I'm the only person in the history of the civil department to get a commendation.
That's awesome. Wasn't it you delivering the summons or something?
Yeah, so I was over in Gary, and I was delivering an eviction notice to somebody. It was a whole apartment building. So I deliver it, and I go around the other side of the building, and then I just get this big smell of weed. And I look into the apartment that's on the ground level. It's got paper taped over all the windows. And it's so strong. I'm like, dude, this has got to be like a grow house or something. So I'm by myself, and I'm delivering the mail. I'm not doing fucking police work. So I don't have a vest on. I don't have my radio with me. I just have a pistol and a pair of handcuffs tucked in the back of my belt. So I go around, I go and knock on the guy's door, and this dude comes bouncing over, and it's a big steel door, and he opens the door, and he's in his boxers, and he's got a blunt in his mouth, He stares at me, and I'm staring at him, and we're both like, he goes, "Oh shit!" He slams the door. And I boot the door. I hear him running through there. I boot the door, go in, and take him down at gunpoint, and I handcuff him. And there's nobody around. I have no radio. I have nothing with me. So I handcuffed him to his own door. And I searched the area. He was actually going for a rifle. He had a rifle that was up on top of the fridge, and he was trying to get to that. But he ended up having all this cocaine. I forget how much it was street level cocaine. It was ounces of cocaine, but for that neighborhood and stuff, he was a prominent little dealer. But he had a bunch of cocaine. He had a bunch of weed he was selling. He had that rifle right there. He was a convicted felon. He had an ankle monitor on with his boxers.
Oh my God.
And then he had like $30-some thousand in a big bag sitting right there too. So,
that's crazy. That's an awesome story.
It was pretty funny. It was actually kind of comical. And then the patrol guys, when I finally get my radio and stuff, I'm able to call in there, and they come over there, and there's like all this cocaine everywhere, and there's money everywhere, and there's this guy chained to his door, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on around here?"
Dude, that's so
I'm
good.
like, just another day in the civil division.
So, you'll probably never know, but the sheriff had to be fucking pissed. They moved you from the position where, like, I just want you to go do nothing, and then this happens.
They did. They purposely put me there to do nothing at that time, fuckers.
That would drive me nuts. Like,
that's what they wanted to do, piss me off.
Really?
Yeah. So, in fact, they were a little bit shitty because I'm like, hey, we got all this stuff, and it was all, when we came into there, it was all kind of in plain view. So I'm like, all right, well, we need to do a warrant so that we can search the rest of this house and get everything else out of here, see what all we got. And they're being shitty about it. Like, oh, why do our drug task force guys got to come out and do that? You did this much. I'm like, dude, I just seized more than you seized all fucking year. So
that's awesome. That is crazy. I never understood why they would move you guys from the highway. Like, you guys always had success. You guys always were up there working, always motivated. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's
the mess
politics,
with,
anytime you're dealing with people,
Yeah, but you're messing with a unit that is like, I don't know, providing so in the financial aspect of it, it's providing so much to that agency that by not having an interdiction team up there, because there was a few years you guys didn't have any team, right?
Yeah, there was. They tried to put a couple people here and there, and so at that time they got, I forget exactly how it went, but they didn't like us, and they bounced me and Oscar both out of interdiction. And so we went to patrol as sergeants, and we were getting on the highway as sergeants at patrol, and we're teaching all them how to do interdiction, and our turn starts making all kind of drug busts, and all these young guys are all excited and stuff, and they're like, all right, that's enough of that. They're like, Stewart, you're going to civil. Oscar, I went to Gary civil. Oscar went to Crown Point civil. So.
Wow. See, I guess when it comes to like a city, like, we don't have, that's like, the worst thing they do is put you back in patrol if you look at that as a punishment. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Like being thrown in the briar patch. That's the good thing about Hobart. And having been at both, I guess you can say that. At Hobart, they get mad at you, they'll throw you in patrol.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's great. I love patrol. But at county, if they get mad at you, they'll put you in civil. They'll put you in the radio room. They put one guy on the bread dock counting bread that was coming into the jail for the inmates.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So they have a lot of creative places they could put you to make you miserable.
And I guess, what is their goal behind it? Like, just to
bury you.
Yeah.
Bury you and get you out of sight, out of mind, so you're not giving them a headache.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just looking at it differently. I don't see a headache there. I just see guys wanting to work. So it's crazy.
Well, that's why you're not an administrator, I guess.
Yeah, and that's probably why I wouldn't do well in that position either. What do you, over the years, you've seen interdiction change. What do you think, good, bad, or indifferent, what do you think the changes have meant on interdiction?
It's been a little while since I've been in interdiction, but some of the tools that they're getting are pretty cool. The LPRs that they have now that are chained up all around the country. You can tell this person has been driving from California to here, wherever. That stuff's all pretty cool. And they even have the database that says that they own a weed distribution company or something. All those things that you guys can do now. They used to have density meters when I was there. We always wanted to get one, but they were just too expensive. We always wish we could have something cool like that. We were out there with a flashlight and a door panel remover. That's it. Out the little pry bar.
Yeah.
So I guess the good and bad is you can become a little bit reliant on that technology. And I think the art part of interdiction is is recognizing the nervousness, recognizing the driving behavior, keying in on those things, and then using maybe the technology to take it a little bit further.
Yep, that's exactly what I say. I love technology as a secondary tool.
Yeah.
But if we lose the ability to communicate with people, we lose the ability to read human behavior and driving behavior. Like it's going to be detrimental because once the criminal organizations find out, they'll just do something different. Like, okay, I'll just change my plate every 8 hours or something. You know what I'm saying? Now you're looking like, oh, I'm only looking for cars coming from this area. Or they'll break it down at a stash pad somewhere before. So I think that with technology, there's always going to be a way that they can beat us as cops because we're always going to do things reactionary to their actions. But when it comes to talking to people and understanding human behavior, like that's never going to go away.
Right. It's human behavior, and that's what they need to key in on, and then use all the other stuff for a little further investigation to kind of narrow it down. A car would catch my interest, and then I would run the plate, and then I would start to kind of think about, all right, where's this car coming from? Where are they at right now? But something has to get your attention. You can't just sit there and batch run plates all day.
Yeah.
So you won't get it. So
I know some teams have had a lot of success with like the batch running plates and long distance and looking. I have not had any success with it. So I'm like, unless I'm doing it completely wrong, which is very, very possible. Like, I'm like, this is like, I don't know. Like, I look at it, all right, this takes me an hour, or like, I know guys that spend 3 hours of their shift doing that stuff. And I look at it and I'm like, all right, let me try this out. I try it out, have zero success. And I'm like, I just wasted 3 hours of cars going by me.
Right. I wish I knew how to do that shit. It was funny. Like early in my career, I was really keying in on human behavior. And what I would catch a lot when I would stop these people and I would interview them, what I would find out is this guy's cheating on their wives. And the reason, I guess, is because they have that guilty reaction, and I represent as a figure of authority, and they know that they're doing something wrong. It's that moral conflict that they're feeling. So they show those same indicators, the same behavior. They're stopping, they're slamming on the brakes, they're lying to me about where they're going. I don't care if you're cheating on your wife, dude. So I guess that's kind of a good example. Like, all right, I have an indicator of someone who's feeling some kind of way about having just seen the police. That's the thing in their environment that has changed, and they had a reaction to it. So, okay, let me key in on this person. Okay, now I see, maybe there's some indicators that saying that he maybe is a guy that's going to a hotel and cheating on his wife versus a guy who's trafficking a carload in somebody else's car, with a compartment and all that. So, you could use that technology, I guess, to kind of narrow those down and eliminate some of those because, you stop one car and you interview them and it's, 10 minutes, you talk to them or something and do your precursory kind of interviews. And then if you decide to search that car for whatever reason, that could be another 30 minutes, an hour, if you're really searching a car. And in that hour, how many cars have gone past you? Hundreds and hundreds of cars have gone past you, so you really wasted a lot of time. So you have to find a way to narrow those down and try and be as efficient as possible.
No, I agree there. I've had two that I've spent about 30, 40 minutes on roadside total. And I would come back and I'd be like, I know you're lying to me. Well, why are you lying? And they're like, man, I'm cheating. Like, same thing. I'm like, yo, I'm not the moral police. I don't care. Like, you would have been out of here 7 minutes, within 7 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, if you would have just been upfront and honest with me. So it's interesting that I didn't know that you had those stories.
Yeah, I have so many funny stuff. So one time I stopped this guy, and he's showing me all these indicators, and he's nervous, and he's lying to me about where he's going. He's just so full of shit. I'm like, man, this dude has got something. And then I'm talking to him outside the car, and I ask him to search his car, and he looks right at his trunk, and he puts his hand on his trunk, and he's like, no, you can't search my car. I'm like, oh, shit. This dude does got it. So I'm like, in those days, I get on the radio, I'd be like, all right, County, send me a dog over here. And people at that time knew our interdiction team was always out there. So when they hear an interdiction guy call for a dog, they get excited too. They want to see what's going on. So we get like 15 cops show up there, all the state troopers and local guys. They're all, hey, what's he got? What kind of loads he got? So we get the dog, and the dog, for whatever reason, indicates on the car. And we open up the trunk, and this little weird guy, he has a whole trunk full of sex toys. And he's some kind of weird pervert. He's going off to like a hotel to meet some other dudes and stuff. It was the most bizarre, but he's like, look, I'm a volunteer fireman, and I know that all you guys talk, cops and firemen, and so I don't want them to know what I'm doing. And he was really embarrassed about it. I'm like, all this for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you just wasted so much of my time.
Yeah, right.
Like, God, interesting.
Yeah, I don't care what you're into.
What is, I don't know.
Gentlemen, whether you are leading the charge at work or just in line at happy hour, you need gear that can keep up. From our rugged beard and oil balm that tame the wildest whiskers to our classic pomade that locks in that clean, commanding look, Semper Suave has your six. No flakes, no fuss, all day, and battlefield level confidence. So square that beard line up, even though people in counterculture think that I don't have a beard. Donut shop. Semper Suave has got your six. Make you look slick and keep you sharp for critical missions or to serve and protect. Check out Semper Suave. We're thrilled to have them as a sponsor. Let us know what you think.
Did you ever get into the CMV world, like commercial motor vehicles at all?
Man, I messed with that a few times, but man, if you're out there knocking down semis, you're a special interdiction guy because that is tough, man. It's like searching a house, you know. You search, and I've been to the desert snows, and I've been to all the schools and the trainings on those, you know. And there's just so many places they can hide dope in a semi. It's unreal. And
yeah.
I'm not a mechanical type person,
Same
you
here.
know. I can't work on cars, but man. Like the gas tanks and the axles and the fifth wheel and this and this. And I'm like, dude, we went to the school, to the training. I forget which one it was. It was down in like Florida. But we came back from the CMV training and we were all excited, going after semis. And we're just going after them, stopping and searching and stopping and searching. And man, that was brutal. Like I go home covered in strawberry juice. And like, if you've been inside of a reefer trailer, and you climb up on the load and we're getting after, we're like, I know there's a false wall up there. I'm going to climb all the way to the front of this load. I'm going to figure it out. And so they close the reefer door so that the Tatler doesn't, the temperature doesn't drop. And climb up on the load, and you got your little, like Rambo, man. You got your little flashlight, and you're crawling through, and it's like smoky because it's cold in there, and your breath is like, whew. You're crawling on your, on your stomach to the front on your elbows. And every time a semi goes by, the whole thing shakes. And I'm just picturing the load falling over and like crushing me to death, and I can't move. Dude, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
So I decided semis were not for me, man.
Yeah,
I'm sure I ruined thousands of dollars worth of loads stepping on them and climbing on top of them and stuff. So
I'm on a kick. It's a bucket list item for me, and it's the most frustrating I've had. Like I'm like oh man, it drives me nuts.
I did get one semi, I'd say in my whole career, that I actually had a load of money in. And it ended up being in the wall of the sleeper. And the sleeper, and it has the columns on the sides where the speakers are at and stuff. You can take the speakers out and kind of get down in there. And that's what the guy had done. He had taken the speakers and the lights out and stuffed it full of money. So I'm all excited, man. I got a semi. I'm waiting for it to be $2 million. It ends up being like $126,000. I'm like, dude, all this for $126,000. I've been doing this for months, killing myself. I could get that out of a car. So that was the end of my semi hunt.
Why did you talk at all? Why was it only 126? Was that as payment money or something?
I mean, I guess that's a lot of money. It would be a lot of money.
But you're looking at semis.
Yeah, when I'm thinking semis, I'm like, there's going to be $1 million in here.
Yeah, for sure.
And I see these guys, they open up the back of the trailer and there's U-Haul boxes full of money. I'm like, you fucking assholes. That is not true. That stuff doesn't happen.
That does happen to me. That's for sure. Trust me, I've opened many.
You know how many doors I've opened on semis and tried to find out. Yeah, so I don't know why it was only that much. But he was a California, I forget what part of California he was out of. But he was out of California, and I stopped him on 94 going up into Detroit. So
he was going into Detroit?
Yeah.
With money?
Yeah. It didn't make any sense to me either. So he was a California plated semi. He was on I-94. I stopped him just a little bit east of Toll Road, where that exchange is. I stopped him right over there, right by the scale, as you cross into Porter County.
Yep.
Had the money.
Crazy. Was he trailer loaded too or no?
Yeah,
like with like legit stuff?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
I think he did have some downtime in this area though. So they kind of speculated that maybe he got something from Gary or Chicago or something like here.
Drop something off them maybe?
Yeah, something. I don't. They thought maybe they could have got the money and he was going to take it back on his way back because he was going to drop this load up in Michigan and go right back.
That makes sense.
I don't know what he was doing.
What beyond the people cheating on their wives and the sex toys and the girl, what is your most memorable dope load?
Most memorable dope load. I don't know. Memorable. I've had a few that were pretty decent size. The one I think about from time to time, kind of because of our conversation earlier, is, and this was before meth was really real big like it is now. I had stopped a dude. He had 26 pounds of meth. But the thing that stuck out about that was I stopped him, and he was all the indicators. He's lying about it. He's like, man, I just drove down there for the day. And he's got his wife, and in the back seat, he's got 3 kids. And one of them is a newborn baby who's in a car seat.
Wow.
And the car seat ended up being strapped on top of the back seat compartment. So, and you know how meth smells. So I could smell it in the car. And the babies are in there, the kids are in there, and it was freezing that day. So it was like one of those, and I'm sure we've all had those decisions where it's like, man, I feel like it's here. He's giving me all the indicators. And you start to search, and you're like, am I going to go far enough? Do I feel it that strongly enough that I'm going to make him get all these babies out of these car seats in the freezing cold and take them back and sit in my car?
Right.
And I did. And they ended up having a backseat compartment, between the trunk and the back seat. And they had a false wall. The babies were strapped to it. So that stuck with me because, one, the babies, but then two, in the post interview, I'm talking to the guy, and he ends up being a guy that grew up on the west side of Chicago, and he knew those people. He hung around with those people when he was young, but he got out of that, and he went and he had a family, and he was a construction worker, and he lost his job. That was during a real recession. So he lost his job as a construction worker, and he had this newborn baby. His cousin says to him, hey, man, I'll give you $2,000. All you got to do is just drive down to Indianapolis. Like, my cousin's having a party. He's like, just drop the car off. They'll go take it, bring it right back, and you come up here. So he didn't know what was in there. But he knows the business. Yeah. He knows what kind of people they are. He grew up around them. He's out of work. He has no money. So I really felt a little bit bad for him. But he's coming back, and he has this $2,000. And when we got the compartment open and started pulling out bags of meth, I mean, he just turned white, ghost white. He was sick because, that direction, he assumed it was going to be money.
Yep.
But in those days, meth moved the opposite way because however it was working back then. But Indianapolis had become a little bit of a hub for meth distribution to this area. A lot of times you see the drugs from Chicago going that way.
Yep.
But this was coming this way. So he kind of assumed it was going to be money just because that's normally what those guys were into. And, man, when we started pulling pounds of meth out of there, he got sick. I felt pretty bad for him, man. His wife is crying. His babies are crying. Everybody's crying.
No, yeah.
I'm taking photos. I'm taking trophy shots,
there are some that that I feel bad for. That get stuck in that very similar situation that have stopped. And I hate the fact that they're using their kids as like almost, I don't know, as a cover. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have the opportunity to pay for dinner or pay your rent or pay your mortgage because you've lost your job, and they offer you that kind of money to make a 6-hour total round trip at most. Like it's hard to say no. You know what I'm saying? Like I mean, in that realm, I would assume that'd be hard to say no, just for the fact that, like, what the hell else am I going to do right now if that's my only option?
The odds of you getting caught are small.
Yeah, very small.
So I have some sympathy for those people, at least a little bit. And the real criminals, they take advantage of people 100%. Like that.
Yep. I feel like that's, I don't know. I can't put a number on it, but a lot of the ones that I feel bad for are typically in that type of situation.
Yeah.
And they're open about it. And
that's why it's important to try to take it a step further too. We would all the time try to do controlled deliveries or something a little bit further to really get to the people who are the bad ones.
Yeah. And I think that the prosecutors and AUSAs around here, since you guys laid such a foundation, I think that they're always okay with that. Like, trying to get to the next level, understanding that this is just a mule. Yes, it's a lot of drugs, but they're just being paid to haul a commodity. And if we can get someone on the other end, it's going to be a much better case. What when it comes to interdiction, if someone wants to get into interdiction or inspires, what are some things that you would tell them to do or not to do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some people just have that personality where they want to be successful and they want to go out and they want to do the big, catch the big criminals and stuff. When we're looking for people that are want to do interdiction, we look for those guys that are aggressive on the street. And like for me, for example, because they translate, right? Interdiction guys are great on the street, great in the neighborhoods because it's still the same behavior, but rather than slowing down and getting behind a semi, they bust a right, or they dip down another street, or they go the wrong, there's always some type of behavior. And so when I was in interdiction and I was kind of in my peak and I got transferred out and they put me in gangs, I was killing it on the street, man. I was getting guns and dope and stuff, finding dope in cars that guys were not finding, all kind of little hidden compartments, the cool little bottles of pop that would open in the middle and all those WD-40 cans where the bottom, guys are missing all those things. Even something as simple as snapping the center console out, and there's a gun underneath there. So I was killing it in patrol. I loved it, So when we're looking for somebody who's going to be good at interdiction, it's those guys who are in the neighborhoods killing it too. And then it translates to, that's like the lake, and they're out there, catching the big fish in the lake, and then you put them out in the ocean of the highway.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes sense. I feel that the whole reason that I kind of want to do this miniseries is I feel that interdiction has the potential to go away, and I don't know if it's because of my generation not passing the knowledge on, or the younger generation not taking enough initiative in it, and that's kind of where I just don't know what the answer is, and I just don't see a lot of guys putting in for the interdiction positions, and you guys generationally had so many good guys, and I guess a bigger agency, but still, there has to be something else there.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing, right? The case law around the country, most states are cracking down a little bit on it, making it harder to seize things. Some departments, they think it's just a treasure hunt out there, and they send guys out there explicitly looking for money. And they're seizing small amounts, $10,000, $20,000. They're seizing these smaller amounts. And if there was ever even a question that the money was legitimate and it's like $10,000, I'm going to give it back to them.
100%.
It's a waste, and those are harder to fight anyway.
Yep.
And I would never want to take somebody's legitimate money wrongfully.
Yep.
So you're seeing states crack down on that, and the reason is because some cops are doing it wrong.
Yep.
So there's going to be case law coming out that's going to restrict interdiction more and more.
I think that's lack of knowledge on both ends, though. It's lack of knowledge of that officer doesn't realize that he's either not making a good enough case or that money's legitimate. But on the prosecution side, I also feel like that they're not able to articulate it well either. So it's kind of just like a lack of knowledge, and I think that's my fear right there. That exactly.
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
you need to have a well-defined nexus, right, between what illegal activity you're alleging and where the money came from.
Right.
And when the person is claiming this is my money and they've got $5,000, $1,000, little amounts like that, it's a little easier for them to justify where it came from. And as far as the police, if it's $10,000 and you have a clearly defined nexus that this person is selling drugs and this, take it. Hell yeah, take it.
Right.
But if you don't, and if there's a question, and if it's even close, err on the side of caution, because you would never want to wrongfully take somebody.
Yep. And the asset forfeiture aspect, if that continues to happen, it's going to go away. And that's in the grand scheme of things, that's how we have the biggest impact on the organizations, the higher level organizations. That profit going back into them is, I don't know, the reason that they do that. And dope is theoretically cheap, especially coming up through, once it's here, that's when the price goes up, but they're buying it super cheap. So the money getting back to the organizations is where we hurt them the most, I feel like. But you have to make sure that nexus is there.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. Because the money not only represents product that's been sold, it represents man hours, it represents effort. So that does hit them pretty hard. But sometimes you can catch them with dope. I could think of a case that I had it was 7 kilos of cocaine, and I stopped the guy on 65, and it was in a trap. But what I found out later was that DEA had been investigating this organization. And they had this guy, and this guy's on the East Coast, and he's saying, yeah, we'd like to buy some drugs from you. And then this guy's over in the Midwest, and he's like, okay, I'll sell you some drugs. And they have all this surveillance and phone taps and all this talk about drug trafficking, but they don't have any dope on the table yet. But when you take 7 kilos and you tie it to them, and they can tie it into that organization, and then tie all the stuff that they had done, which was extensive, now they're taking down a whole organization with 7 kilos. You got charged with 7 kilos. You got charged with, like Oprah. You got 7. You got 7. You got 7. So you can, with dope on the table, you can really take down an organization. Money on the table, yeah, you hurt them, but it's probably not going to. business.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I didn't look at
You
it.
put people in prison with dope.
You're right. Yeah, 1%. I feel like if you find, unless you want to cooperate, once you find the drugs, that's kind of like the end of the investigation. If you find money, that's pretty much the opening of the investigation. Now you have to do so much more legwork to either it's legitimate or it's not. But that's opening. That's like the door opening to the investigation to figure out where it came from. But
that's the thing about interdiction that I think I like and a lot of people like is that it's tangible, right? I made a seizure. I seized 10 kilos of cocaine. Here's a picture of it. This is what it looks like. This is how I quantify my success. Versus, I arrested a guy who had a gun while he was going to maybe go do a drive-by. We think he's a gang member, and I've prevented something. But you really can't measure something that you prevented or something that you've deterred. So a lot of times you're doing these investigations and arresting people, or you're out on the street and you arrest this person on a warrant or whatever. Sometimes it's hard to quantify how successful you are by preventing something versus seizing something.
Yeah, like it's I don't know. It's like instant gratification.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like maybe
and that's what I like.
Yeah, yeah. Like maybe there's the potential. Like yes, I got a gun off the street, but what was it going to do? Like I know that this kilo was going to negatively impact this community. So like I completely agree with that. I like that. Anything else you could think of that you want to provide?
No, interdiction, man, and really police work in general. And I say things like this sometimes to rookies who are coming in, and if I speak to them, if you're going to be a policeman and that's your career, be a professional and become an expert in all the things that are required of police officers. For example, case law. And that's one thing that Oscar taught us early in our career was that we would talk about case law and proper search and seizure and how the law works. And a lot of times I would be in a motion to suppress hearing and I would be educating the defense attorney because I knew more about it than he did, which, for me, that got me excited. That sent me on a whole nother career path, Ended up getting a law degree and now I'm a prosecutor. So focus on that case law. And it becomes more and more important these days, in the age of cameras and stuff. So be a professional in everything. Focus on that. Go train jiu-jitsu, learn the law, do all the things that are required of police officers.
When it comes to what you're doing now, I know you're fresh at it, but like, how are you going to quantify that instant gratification doing this?
Yeah. I mean, and so your listeners know, I retired at exactly my 20-year date at county. I retired and then started as a prosecutor in the same county where I was a officer. So as a prosecutor, it seems to me, I've only been there a few weeks now, but it seems like a natural continuation of all the things that I was doing. I'm putting cases together, I'm talking to victims, I'm putting bad guys in jail, which I like. So I guess that's how I'll quantify it. I'll put a guy in jail for 100 years.
Yeah.
Like that's a good win.
How is that learning curve for you?
Man, it's steep.
Is it?
It's steep. All you cops out there talking shit about prosecutors, they're not fucking lazy. I'm telling you, man, it's brutal. It's a lot of work. And everybody in that office is busting their ass every day, man. It's a grind too, and just in a different way, a mental grind.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You talked about case law, and that's why I had Mike. Like Mike, he became a lawyer, and he's just like, if I don't know, I can bounce it off him, and he's going to be able to explain it in like layman terms. Like most cops, I can read it. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna understand it because of the terminology, but I'm like, hey, Mike, what the hell does this mean? And he'll be like, I guess it's like Cliff Note for dummies. He'll like break it down for me and explain it. So
Mike's great at that stuff, man.
Yeah,
he really is.
He's amazing. Well, both of him and I both teach for this company called Justice Academy. Mm-hmm. We end every podcast with, what is your definition of justice?
You should have gave me like some questions before I came here to prep for them. Everybody getting what they deserve. Bad or what?
You're the second person that said that. So the last podcast I did, that's what they said. They're like, justice doesn't have to be bad; it can be good too. And
I mean, I like to see people get what they deserve. When they get a promotion that they earned, because in our business, you see so many people get promotions and positions and spot just by kissing ass. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't do anything. They haven't done shit their whole fucking career. You know, and they end up being a commander or whatever. But on the other side of that coin too is, you know, really bad people. And seeing them get what they do, what they deserve. You know, they're out there being cool on the street, and you know, and you hit them with 110 years in prison.
Yeah. No, I completely agree on both aspects. So I appreciate you though, man.
Yeah, it was great. Good to
You
catch
truly, I don't care how many times you truly changed the trajectory of my career. There's no doubt about it. 3 hours of the academy, and then I don't know how I got lucky enough to get up there part time, but
Yeah,
I'll
it was
always
good
be
times.
grateful for the time that you spent with me, man.
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of young guys out there looking at
I
Kenny
hope.
Williams saying,
I hope.
you know, this guy changed my mindset. So.
I hope in the fact that I don't want interdiction to die. Not that I'm like I want to be like you or anything. Like I just don't want it to go away because I think interdiction is so impactful and it has so much potential to really really impact the communities and stuff. And
It really does. I mean, take a load of dope off that size, probably save somebody's life that weekend.
yeah, probably more than one, but at least one for
Yeah.
sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, it was great to catch up, man.